Good. Why don't we
Go.
I think we can get rolling. All right, fantastic. Welcome everyone to the June edition of the My Million Year Monthly Speaker Series. I'm your host, Bryant, and joining me is my co-host, Ed. We're both life coaches, and our goal is to help our community members realize and achieve their dreams. We are officially in summer. Congratulations on making it through COVID. We're on to some great weather, hopefully, and much needed vacations. I'm very excited for today's speaker, Harrison Cheng, who really exemplifies this month's theme of pride and service. He's currently a funds controller at the EPA, working down in DC, and a former Peace Corps changemaker. He's one of my oldest and dearest friends. We've been friends for more than 25 years. And fun fact, somehow managed to attend every school together from kindergarten, elementary, middle, high school, and college. So it has been a long road for us. And I'm so glad that, Harrison, you've been my friend for all these years. We're proud to recognize June this month as Pride Month. We're celebrating the LGBTQ community in the United States. Some history. On June 28th, 1969, that marked the beginning of the Stonewall Uprising, a series of clashes between the police and LGBTQ protesters, including raids of gay bars and people fighting back against that. This event marked a significant tipping point for the gay liberation movement in the United States. And what originally started as Gay Pride Day grew to celebrations of Pride throughout the month of June. And today, LGBTQ Pride attracts millions of participants around the world. This month, we celebrate the remarkable progress in this country and the hope to better lives for people everywhere. Also of significant note, June also brings us Juneteenth, commemorating June 19th, signed into law this year as a federal holiday, also known as Black Independence Day. It is the first new federal holiday since Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So a lot of remarkable things going on in June. So that's enough of my opening remarks. We'll head over now to do the financial tip of the month with Ed. Ed, what have you got for us?
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about credit card hacking, also known as travel hacking. I prefer to call it credit card hacking because some people don't like to travel, and they'll use the points for other things. So it's actually pretty similar to what I had shared a couple of months ago around bank bonus hacking. So the general process is pretty similar. So what I always recommend is Doctor of Credit, which is a website that monitors all of the different bonuses that are out there, the latest things, and it tells you, it pretty much organizes everything for you in terms of what the bonus details are, how much you need to spend, any fees and things like that. So that's always step one for me, is figuring out what bonuses are out there. Step two is then tracking everything is really important. So the tracker, I'll do a zoomed view of it here. It's actually the same tracker that I'd shared for bank bonuses. So keeping everything organized is pretty important, especially if you do this year over year. So you need to know when your account's open, close. It's good to track how much the bonuses are, whether you've hit the spend requirements, and things like that. So pretty standard tracker here, same one that I've used and shared a couple months ago for bank bonuses. So I wanted to give an example of what this could look like. So right now, there is a really good deal going on. It's with Chase Sapphire Preferred, and they're offering 100,000 points bonus if you spend $4,000 in the first 3 months. And if you apply in branch, the normal fee of $95 is waived for the first year, and they're throwing in a $50 grocery credit. So the value of doing this is over $1,300. And you could probably squeeze more out of this depending on how you use those points. So maybe you can get up to at least, I would say, $1,500 if you use it for travel purposes and you transfer points to airlines and things like that. But this, I would always say, is a good gateway into starting credit card hacking, which is essentially, finding these bonuses, meeting the spend requirements, getting the bonus, which is worth a lot more than what you saw with bank account, like checking account bonuses, and then finding a way to get out of the fee. So whether that's canceling the card or downgrading the card to a no fee credit card. That way you get the bank bonus, but then you don't have to pay the fee, or you pay it for just a year, and then you switch to something else. So a couple of questions that generally come up with credit card hacking. It's different in bank than the bank accounts churning, in that there are impacts to your credit score. So if you are planning on buying a house or getting a mortgage or something in the next couple of months, you may want to avoid opening up credit cards because there is a short-term impact to your credit score. It's usually about 20 to 30 points. It'll go down because it is a hard pull of your credit, which in the short term does impact your credit score. In the long term, it's actually a positive impact, because the more credit you have available that's not utilized, that actually helps your credit score. So there's not really a lot of impact in the medium to long term, but in the short term, it's definitely something to keep in mind. And you may not want to open up a lot of cards at once. So spacing this out, every 3 or 4 months or so is a good way to not have too much of an impact to that credit score. The other piece I mentioned is when you close accounts, because you are losing some of your available credit, that could hurt your credit score. So a way to get around that is to just downgrade the cards to cards that don't have a fee. So as an example, the Chase Sapphire Preferred, before you hit that second year, when that $95 gets charged again, what you could do is downgrade that to a Chase Freedom card, for instance. That way the account actually stays open and you don't have a fee. So that's a good way to get around that. Something else that comes up quite often in this space is this Chase 524 rule. This only applies to Chase credit cards, but Chase happens to have most of the best bonuses out there. The 524 rule is that if you have opened up 5 credit cards in the past 2 years, the past 24 months, they will automatically reject any application. And that's not just 5 Chase cards, that's any 5 credit cards. So something to keep in mind as you're thinking about this. And then the last piece that I'll just mention briefly is spend requirements. So sometimes if people can't hit the spend requirements, so if you don't generally spend $4,000 in a 3-month period, there's a lot of ways you can essentially manufacture spend, whether that is buying Amazon gift cards or something, or any kind of gift card really, that also counts. And if you really had to hit spend requirements, you could do things like paying your taxes early or paying your rent through a credit card. Both of those two, paying your taxes and paying rent through credit cards, you can those typically cost money. It's typically about 2 or 3%. But if you think about how much that costs versus the value that you're getting from the bonus, it's really not close. So maybe it's going to cost you $100, for instance, in fees for using your credit card for some of those types of expenses, but the value you're getting is over $1,000. So definitely worth it from a financial perspective.
Hey, Ed, actually, one other tip I usually do is I'll buy an Amazon gift card. So let's say I'm shy like $200, I'll just buy like a $300 Amazon gift credit. Yeah,
definitely a way to do it. Amazon's a good one because you can buy pretty much anything on Amazon. So it's a good way to store up and hit those spend requirements.
And Amazon points never expire.
Yes. And any questions on how to do this, why to do this, and anything around that?
Sounds good. Sounds like any questions from the chat? I think that was a good presentation, Ed. Real solid. We have a question?
No, I don't think so. So hopefully that was straightforward, and you'll be inspired to start. I wish I could get that bonus. Unfortunately, the Chase Sapphire card doesn't allow you to get the bonus if you've already gotten it in the past 4 years. That's why it is important to keep track of when you last had accounts. So if it's still around in February, I'll be on it. But as of now, I cannot get that bonus.
Thanks for the tip, Ed. Yeah, I'm no longer eligible either. I think I applied like 2 years ago, back when it was like 65,000. So 100,000 is crazy. That's a really good bonus. Yeah. And if folks have more questions about credit, we did do a Credit 101 town hall with Chantel Jackson, New York Council State Assemblywoman. That's on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out too. All right, moving right along. So we're going to move into our community building segment. That's where we break off into breakout groups, small breakout groups, and we discuss a question of the day. It's a great way to get to know each other. So we're going to quickly send you off into breakout rooms of 3 to 5 people, and it'll give you a chance to connect with other members of the community. So as you introduce yourselves with your name, where you are right now, maybe your occupation. I also want to throw out today's question of the day, and that is, in the spirit of service, what's the last volunteer or community service that you dedicated time to? Or if it's been too long, trapped in quarantine, and you can't remember, what is your favorite nonprofit organization? Discuss. All right, Ed, send us away.
There we go.
See you back in. I think we're back. Awesome. Hopefully you guys all had a good time in the breakout rooms, getting to know each other a little bit better. And good to see some more videos on and familiar faces. Brett, hey, it's been a while. Yeah, really great catching up with everybody. And hopefully you guys got to hear about different service opportunities. Maybe as we get out of our houses and back out into the real world, we can do more good out there. I think that'll really make a big difference. All right, so now we are into the main event. I'm going to reintroduce our esteemed speaker. Harrison Cheng is a former Peace Corps changemaker who served as an English instructor in Lanzhou, Northwest China. He spent 2 incredible years building community and empowering students, teachers, and locals. He later joined NYU Shanghai as a community engagement and outreach program manager to develop partnerships for service, learning, and volunteer programs. Harry now works in the federal government as at the EPA as a funds controller. He actually started his career out in banking, but discovered that success and fulfillment looked different for everyone, and that there's a lot of value in working in the public and nonprofit sector. So we're here to hear from Harrison about his career journey, what he's learned along the way, and give us a different perspective on life. So Harrison, welcome to My Million Year. So great to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, from what I understand, you did a little bit of prep and you brought your own slides, which is really nice. So I think we're going to bring that up on screen.
That'd be great. Yeah, I think it just helps me better tell my story from the 2 years I was with Peace Corps. So, I was an English teacher at a vocational college in Northwest China. So this is in Gansu province in the town of Lanzhou. It used to be a really big deal during the Silk Road, on the Silk Road, but that was like 600 years ago. So now it's just kind of a poor town, but still developing. And most of my students were from these rural communities, right? So their parents were growing, corn and potatoes, like definitely not wealthy. And I do think they lived quite sheltered lives. And I think they were, for people who are, 18 to 21 or 22, they seem much more innocent and childlike, I would say, than any of the 18 or 20-year-olds I knew in college, right, at NYU or at wherever we went to college in America. So it was a really different experience and really, really fun just being a mentor for them and spending 2 years like teaching them English and hanging out. So next slide.
So maybe as we jump to the next one, Harry, maybe you could talk what was the process, getting into the Peace Corps, and maybe a little bit of background on the mission of the Peace Corps.
Yeah, sure. So JFK had put this program together, and our mission is to develop friendship and peace across different countries, especially those that we're not closely allied with, right, or very good friends with on a regular basis. And it's to help give our host communities a better feel and sense of what America is all about and what Americans are like and what our culture is like. And also it's a way for us to take back with us when we're done what the culture and values are of our host community and our host country. So that's a mission of Peace Corps. And I think prior to COVID, and they will operate again after COVID, they're in like at least 60 countries, opening new countries and closing countries depending on the political situation. And so it took about a year from the time I applied, and then you get a quick response to do an interview, an application, an interview, and then you get accepted or denied, I guess, pretty quickly from the beginning of your application. And then later it is a pretty thorough and rigorous health check or health clearance, because they want to make sure if they send you to somewhere that's pretty provincial or rural, you might not have access to a hospital or doctor for, hospital maybe for several hours of driving, right? In my case, I was in a city, so it's a little different, but you do have to be in tip-top shape. But it's a great program. We have a full staff of program managers, program assistants, 24-hour safety and security hotline for safety and security team, 24-hour medical team they can call if you're really sick or you have an emergency. So that was a process of getting into Peace Corps. And then we do 3 months of training with your entire cohort. So my cohort was, I think, like 80 individuals, and we trained together to do, 3 months of like language training, culture training in the city in Chengdu, which is larger and more prosperous. And then we're sent to basically like around 80 different universities across 4 provinces. So I ended up here in Gansu. And as you can see, we had a lot of fun in the classroom and out of the classroom. Yep. Because I was teaching English, most of my students just happened to be female. Every class there's always like 2 or 3 guys, and they just seem so disgruntled to be there. Because in China, you don't always get to pick your major. It's just whatever your score falls, that's, you're accepted into a range of universities based on your score, and actually a range of majors based on your score too. But, we had a lot of fun, and my theme was also a lot about empowerment, right? Because I am an English teacher, but the majority of my students probably will never use English on a regular basis for their jobs, just given that we are not in Beijing or Shanghai. And whether or not they move to another city, that's a different story, but most of them would stay in Lanzhou or Gansu. And so I just wanted to give them a sense of empowerment, especially as women in China, young women in China. They're always, you're much more put in this pressure to conform to society, right? To not kind of be different, to stand out. Like you have to be really, really skinny, like really wayfish, like really pale skin. Everybody wants to look at all their movie stars. They're just like really, really white or light skinned, I would say. And I was just kind of like, you know what, you have to live for yourself, just have fun, right? There's a lot of things that you can do that you're not aware you can do, or you don't have to do what everybody else is doing, because that's exhausting to go through life living for other people or living just to conform to what society wants you to conform to, right? And that ties into Pride Month later. But so here are my students in the top left corner. I started a bike club with them to get them access to the bike share. And so that way they can, our campus is kind of on the edge of the city. So this way they can get to downtown, to more restaurants and more cultural sites easily, instead of just taking a bus, because they were, building a metro at the time, and it took forever getting anywhere by the roads, by driving. But if you're on a bike, it's a lot faster. So they could just go visit their friends, visit their family by bike. And that was a really, sustainable, right? It's like carbon neutral, it's exercise, it's empowering people to make their own decisions. So that's like a little slice of the best things Peace Corps has to offer.
Right.
On the bottom left, it was winter solstice. So my students would regularly come and cook with me at my apartment. So here we're making dumplings, and we used to joke that dumplings are like snowflakes. No 2 dumplings are exactly the same, because
that's true.
Everyone's look different. And mine were the ugliest at the time, though I've gotten better now.
Dumplings are hard.
Yeah.
A lot of
Top
work.
right here, we're pretending to go skiing and snowboarding because none of my students have gone skiing before. So I did a lesson on winter sports, and Lindy, her name is Lindy, she's about to get ejected, down a mountain here. So they're skiing. And bottom right, this is Secret Santa. So this is really fun because they never did, I was like, okay, the point is to steal gifts from other people. And they were so, they're like, this is so awkward. You can't just steal. I was like, well, that's the point of the game. You have to, you have to take things like that. That's the point. You steal from your friends. So, it's like a taboo to steal, but they had a lot of fun with that.
You American teaching them like bad things like stealing. How could you?
Yeah.
So so you were teaching a class. Like how many times a week were you teaching? And like, does your class have like a name?
Yeah. So we would teach groups of roughly 25 students per class, and then each semester I'd have 3 different classes. So let's say section A, B, and C.
Right.
And I'd see them twice a week each. And then depending on the semester, I would either get new students or like a different group, like sophomores, I would switch to freshmen or the incoming freshmen. And then later on this group, the reason I pull them up is because I taught them for 3 semesters. So that was really, really fun to kind of have that continuity with the same group of students for a year and a half. And then, when they left, I cried my eyes out when I finished my program too. I was just so grateful for the opportunity to spend so much time with different students.
Yeah. Wow. That's really incredible.
Yeah. And then just a little bit more on some activities you would do. So this is downtown. This is by the Yellow River, which is called the Mother River in China because Chinese civilization came from this, earthy river. So we would, on the weekends, sometimes we would bike down there and we would just have lunch, or you drink tea by the river, which is always fun. Bottom left was my co-teacher, another Peace Corps volunteer, Bobby. So he got here a year before me. So he was my co-teacher for a year, and his boys are graduating here. So you can see they're like posing for graduation photos, which is super fun. Bottom right, there was a cheerleading competition at school. Like one day, I just randomly, I went to my class and the classroom was empty. And a lot of times they don't tell you that there's an event until you just figured out on your own when you're like, where are all my students? So then you hear all this noise on the other side of campus and you find your students dressed up like superheroes. And they're doing like a really cool cheerleading competition thing to Avril Lavigne music. And then top right, this is towards the end of my 2 years when my guy students, we all went out for dinner and KTV just to celebrate one last time before saying goodbye. And most of my students would end up teaching, probably not English, or maybe English and a mix of Chinese. A lot of them have gone to Xinjiang province because the Chinese government has kind of pushed for this Han culture, the Sinicization of Xinjiang, because Xinjiang is mostly Uyghur, right? So they're ethnic minorities. And for better or worse, the government's plan is to educate these Uyghurs and other Kazakh minorities with Han, Chinese culture, so language, customs, just kind of like taking the Han culture and pushing it onto the Uyghur population. And I think everybody knows what's going on there too, if you do a quick Google search. But a lot of my students are teachers in Xinjiang province. And the really fun thing about my province, Gansu and Lanzhou, my city, is that there are not so many Han people that you think of, like, Bryant and myself, we look like a typical Han Chinese that you would see in most of Eastern China, like Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong.
Yep.
My town was a lot of Tibetan and Hui. Hui means Muslim, so a lot of Tibetan Chinese and Muslim Chinese. So on the left here, one of my co-teachers, she had a wedding. So you can see it's a mix of Chinese and Middle Eastern influences, right? Like the colors are red and gold. Yeah. The colors are very Chinese, but the way she's covering her hair and it's much more conservative, like covering, her arms and her body, it's more, you can see more of a Muslim influence. And then in the middle, just a couple hours drive from my town, we could visit like a lot of Tibetan monasteries and Tibetan temples. This one was in Hezuo, the town of Hezuo. And then on the right side here, with one of the families I frequently visited in my town, you can see here Ali, the baby's name is Ali, so clearly a Muslim family. And then this is his great-grandfather. Wow. Yeah, so, and they were actually my distant relatives, and that's a story for another day. But I did spend a lot of time with them because it was my mom's half sister, so it was my aunt, and we had never even met before. My mom had never met her sister before, but so I was the first one in my family to meet them, and they lived a short bike ride from my apartment. So that was really cool.
That's incredible. Now, was that intentional or by chance that, you know, your Peace Corps assignment ended up like bringing you so close to family that you didn't know you had?
I normally I don't think you get to pick. They just pick
Yeah.
you. It's like the sorting hat at Harry Potter, whatever they call it. But you know, I dropped a lot of hints like, oh, I heard I have relatives here. I really want to go. And then they put me there.
You hinted.
So, cheated. I'm glad I
Wow.
cheated. And then this on the left is pretty typical of all of China. You'll have a mix of like pretty old buildings. This is probably centuries old, the temple of the local god in Lanzhou. And then, you know, these high-rise apartments, like 1960 style, that are also being torn down to build like these new glass, you know, fancy modern condos. So a lot of development. And on the right, this is what I loved about my town. Like it wasn't fancy like Shanghai, you know, it's not rich like Beijing, but it was so real. Like on the weekends, I would do this too, right? You eat a cheap bowl of noodles for like $1, maybe less than a US dollar. You enjoy the weather, and it's dirty, it's messy. You know, when your friends go out, everyone's smoking and drinking, and you're just dropping all your napkins or skewers, you know, plates, whatever you want. You just kind of leave it on the floor. You know, you kind of leave the place a mess. But it's fun, right? It's a totally different way of living from the way we grew up in America and in our country, where there's lots of rules and regulations, and yeah, you got to be polite. You know, you have to say please, you have to say thank you. Here, like you just do what you want, which is really refreshing for 2 years at least. It's just a really different vibe.
Wow. So food, more food.
Yeah, always food. Here, hand pull noodles. So Lanzhou is famous for Lanzhou la mian, which means Lanzhou hand pull noodles. If you get you can order different sizes. If you get the big one, like da kuan, you're gonna get one noodle. Your whole bowl of noodles is gonna be one giant noodle, as I'm demonstrating here.
Gosh.
And
that's gotta be fun to eat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's amusing. And again, because Northwest China is very closely tied culturally to Central Asia and the Middle East. So we don't eat a lot of pork in my town. You eat a lot more lamb, right? Everything is lamb kebab, lamb skewers, lots of beer. And then in the top, my language teacher from training, we had become good friends. And you know, there's all these rules like, oh, you can't drink with your teachers, don't do this, do that. But she just took me everywhere. So she was meeting up with her college friends here, and they're just talking business. And when you talk business, you got to eat, you got to drink, you got to smoke. And, you know, everyone's just like smoking like a chimney and getting drunk. And I've spent a lot of my 2 years like that. So pretty awesome, right? It's just a different vibe, you know. And then the hot pot
really
bottom,
different.
Yeah, different vibe, a lot more fun. And then the bottom right, this is hot pot. So this is what you eat, just like a boiling broth with a layer of chili oil on top. And everybody just dips their food in there for like 30 seconds to a minute, and you take it out and it's fresh and delicious, and your stomach pains come the next morning, but you know, totally worth it. I would do it again.
Sometimes I feel that way about eating at certain places in New York. You know, there are always those hole in the wall places, and like, oh, it's just, you don't expect it, but it's delicious, and then you can regret it tomorrow.
Yeah, but you only live once, so you got to do it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, real quick though, Harry, like, so with all that food, I was curious about the Peace Corps. They give you a stipend, right? There's a certain amount of like money that you get to spend per day. You know, what is that? And then, you know, how does that play into like, you know, feeding yourself and expenses during the trip?
So it differs for every country based on the cost of living. But for us, we were paid, I think, like $8 a day. And, you know, our housing is provided for by the university because most of us live in like teacher housing, let's say, on the campus. And we don't have to pay for health insurance because we are covered in some sense by the Peace Corps. So if we have medical problems, we just call Peace Corps, email them, and they ship us medication, or they will, if it's urgent, they will fly us to the headquarters or to a hospital. But $8, it was enough. You're meant to live a local lifestyle. That's probably on par with what a local teacher would get paid. I think their salary would be higher, but they have to pay for housing and health insurance. So it kind of evens out. And you know, a bowl of noodles here is $1. Where I lived, it was $1, you know? So kebabs are also, everything was inexpensive. You can choose to live expensively, but you're meant to basically take the buses, ride a bike. You're not taking taxis. You're not flying first class. You're not going to like the fancy restaurants in town. There were very few of those anyway.
Right.
So you're meant to basically spend money on groceries, on, you know, fruits and vegetables. maybe buying small gifts for your students or materials for your classroom. So $8 a day goes a pretty long way here.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how you stretch that dollar. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. But I mean, it went a long way, and, you know, we all got by. So on the top left here, this is just more scenes from my town. You can see it's a little dirty. It's a little dusty. We're in the middle of a desert. You know, there's these cables, I guess, power cables, just like all over the city, you know, very typical of, I think you see that in like Jakarta or parts of India, you know, just where there's really, really booming, lots of booming development. And then a mosque in the background, as was very common. We had to do a summer training program, and all of our, from my province, all 20 of us got together. We went to this small town to do like teaching English to teachers, adult teachers. And on the weekends, we would get out and climb the mountains, and it was just so beautiful and, you know, a fun way to bond because you don't see your other volunteers on a regular basis, right? So, I mean, I did because I lived in a city, so I would see some other people. But if you're more rural, you see your fellow volunteers like once every couple months.
Right.
And then this is Qinghai province, which is also close to us. And you can see, again, Tibetan prayer flags, Tibetan temples, just all over the hills and the plateau. Yeah.
Right. Got it.
And just
what is this?
Yeah, real quick, some crazy fun travel, right? So you get 2 years, and in between teaching courses, you get summers off and winter break. And that's when you can use your vacations to leave your town to explore the country. So in the winter, I went to Harbin. This is northeast China, very close to Russia. So there was actually like a Russian Orthodox Onion Dome church that they converted into a museum. But you know, so it's a lot of Russian influences. There's just a sculpture festival, snow sculpture, ice sculpture. They had recreated the Forbidden City to like a miniature scale, but it was like super crazy that this whole place was just ice bricks, you know, really beautiful. So that was really fun to do in the winter. And then in the summers or just throughout the year, you know, there's so many different options to go to. So I went with my friends to Huashan, which is like one of many secret mountains in China. And we went on a cloudy day, and you can actually, by the time you get to the top, you can see kind of the steam where the clouds, I guess, billowing, you know, out of the earth, like evaporating and making formations. And that was really cool.
Right.
The bottom, this is Guilin, southern China. And this is typical when you think of China, you think of like the karst mountains, the limestone. Yeah. There are lots of little lakes and rice paddies everywhere. And you just take a bike and wander around for a couple of days. Shanghai on the bottom right, this is canola flower season, and they will press this into canola oil. But a lot of smart farmers realize they can make even more money by having tourists pay like 50 kwai, which is a lot for China, you know, China, to like step into their little to their fields and take pictures. So everyone gets dressed up nicely, and they go and they take photos and put them on WeChat or, you know, Chinese social media.
Right.
And then top right is Zhangye, and these are like the famous Rainbow Mountains, just formations of rock. Yeah.
Wow, really beautiful.
Yes.
It's really I mean, what you shared with us in those photos really shows I think, you know, a side of China, a side of the world that, you know, we're not always you know, familiar with. I think we automatically assume like, yeah, you know, a country can be summed up, you know, by a single picture or, you know, a single like representation we have in our minds. But I mean, clearly here, you know, you see how diverse, you know, China can be from what you think, how any country really can be so diverse.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the good thing about Peace Corps, that we are on the ground in our local community. So when I guess my students didn't talk about politics too much, they were younger, but my peers who were in my 30s and I befriended them, they'd always ask about the trade war and Donald Trump and does America hate China and what are they, you know, like, this in North Korea and what do you think of Japan and what do you think of Hong Kong? And it's a good way for us to say, like, you know, the average American, I don't think the average Chinese person hates Americans, and Americans don't hate Chinese either. Like, we have a lot of common ground, right? Everybody wants a better future. Everybody wants economic prosperity.
Right.
We do it in different ways. Like, we are a democracy, and democracy is messy and complicated. You guys are like a, you know, dictatorship. I mean, communist, like nominally communist country, but you know, there's no elections, and Xi Jinping he's going to be in power like forever. but you know, there's like good things about both systems. There's good things about both countries. Brett has a good question. Were there any preconceptions?
So yeah, question from Brett, just to read it out loud. What preconceptions of China that you had got flipped completely on their head while you were there? I think that's a good question for this discussion right now. Yeah, any perspectives there?
For me, a lot of times in the media, you know, the focus is always on like Beijing or Shanghai or Hong Kong and just how wealthy and developed China is, and that is true. But you know, the wealth is also concentrated in the coastal cities, and there's extreme wealth inequality like there is in America. So, you know, when I visited my students' homes, like I wasn't shocked, I guess, but you know, they lived on farms. They had there's like concrete walls, and then their chickens and their dogs are just like running around the courtyard. They run into the homes, and we're eating. We just drop our, you know, the bones or the rice. We just leave it on the floor, and the chickens will come and eat it. So I do think I was kind of just surprised at how, like, yeah, I mean, everyone's like, oh, the China's wealth per capita has quadrupled in, you know, X amount of years, and like that's true, sure, but most Chinese are not living in these nice cities, right? The majority, like, meaning hundreds of millions of people, are not living in these like elite coastal cities. And then the other preconceived notion was I didn't even know, like, I mean, yeah, of course I knew about Tibet, but I didn't know just like how many different minorities there were in China. And a lot of times you cannot, it's not easy to tell because we're all, you know, Asian, right? So it's not like in America, you're black or you're Central American or you're Asian or you're white. Like it's very easy to tell who is who, but here there's a really large mix of different minorities. You know, Tibetan or Chinese Muslims or Chinese Arabs. And it's just interesting because we don't always hear about those people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. A lot of, I mean, you know, we can all, you know, look similar or look the same, but, you know, be very different deep down inside. But I mean, fundamentally,
sorry, just like some discussions I've had in America, we're obviously really fortunate that, you know, if we are gay or lesbian in America, we all know that, okay, we have laws that protect us, right? We can get married. You know, I can start a family, I'll marry my husband, we can have kids if we want to. It's all like options, but none of them are ruled out for us, right? It's just, we make our own decisions. We're empowered to live our lives the way we want to live our lives. Whereas I do think in China, like there is no, you know, there are very few laws that are supporting the LGBTQ community, right? And I think increasingly in recent years, it's actually shrinking. So they used to have gay pride in Shanghai or Beijing. They don't anymore. And it was really tough. Like my peers who were my age, who were gay, like, especially, I think maybe in the coastal cities, it's different, but for Northwest China, like the expectations and the pressure to get married is so extreme that like, if you're a woman, you know, by the time you're in your early to mid 20s, like you have to get married. You know, my students were already talking about, oh, we need to get married. My boyfriend, he's like, they're 20 years old, you know, and the boyfriend's like, okay, I have to buy a house somewhere, somehow save money to buy a house because you can't get married without having a house. Like that's just societal norms. But you cannot escape the pressure. Like you can't just live for yourself, right? As much as I tell my students, like, yeah, do what you want, live for yourself. You're your own person. You're not limited, but you are by laws of society, by, you know, laws set in. Like you cannot get married to the woman you love if you're lesbian. You cannot get married to the man you love if you're gay. And a lot of people just end up in these loveless relationships where they do have children, and it's quite sad, right? Or like there's all these different creative ways to, you know, you're a gay guy and you marry a lesbian and then you like live your own life separately with your real love, the love of your life, and so on and so forth. But I think it's just something I definitely took for granted growing up in America, because even if you're younger, you kind of knew the writing was on the wall, right? Okay, there's gay marriage in Massachusetts, and then slowly it kind of spreads across the country. You know, you knew it was inevitable that gay marriage was achievable by the time I would be interested in getting married, like, which is now. But for my peers in China, you just feel terrible for them because gay marriage will not be a reality for them by the time they want to get married, which is also now if you're 30, right? And it might not be a reality like forever, for their whole lifetime. And that's true for many, many countries around the world, right? So I think in that, just that one context, as a Peace Corps volunteer, if you're in Guatemala, you're Ukraine, Morocco, Indonesia, you're just see the overarching, structure of the government and the economy, and you can see how, in some ways, we are so fortunate. Just you can speak your mind, right? You cannot criticize the government in China. You cannot criticize the president. There's propaganda everywhere. So I just felt very fortunate. I loved the experience. I would do it again in China or any of the other countries. If I'm still healthy, I would do this whole thing again for 2 years anywhere in the world where they needed me. But I do feel very fortunate to be based out of America long term, because even something as simple as getting married, like who doesn't want to get married? Who doesn't want to have kids, right? Who doesn't want to start a family? And for people, that's just not their reality.
Right.
They're stigmatized, right? The parents pressure them and everything.
Right.
So career-wise, so this is just a quick recap of like Chase. We were talking about like, oh, what do you want? What do you tell undergrads what they want to do or how they want to start their career? Like, you can do anything. So I've done, I started in finance, so that's my first 2 jobs. That's considered the private sector. Got bored of that, went to Peace Corps. That's like public sector, with the American government and also with the Chinese government partnership. Moved on to NYU Shanghai to work as a community engagement manager. So that's technically a nonprofit. It is a very expensive nonprofit, but is an expensive, private nonprofit university. So that's kind of a nonprofit. And now back to the Environmental Protection Agency as a funds controller. So public sector, federal government, and currently working on my executive master's in nonprofit administration. So hopefully down the road, I can work as a grants specialist, managing programs at the EPA, in partnership with like local tribes or under-resourced communities for access to clean water. So, and I do think a degree in nonprofit administration will help build the credentials to get my foot in the door to be like a grants specialist or a program officer, or program manager, something like that. So yeah, that I am, in summary, for any of you who are American citizens, like I don't care how young or old you are, like Peace Corps should definitely be on your radar at some point in your life, because it's had a huge impact on me, especially coming from private sector work where you're just making money for the man, right? For the shareholder. Like what's your stock price? How many accounts are you getting? How much revenue are you generating? And then to kind of flip your brain and do something good for community, for society, right? To put all your resources into your students and watching them grow and having good times with them, and kind of ushering them out of the safety of their university into the real world. So there's a lot of careers that are really rewarding, and I think Peace Corps definitely got me in the right mindset to explore those options. And I think it's just a good break for, I think a lot of people who listen to these calls are probably like banker consultant people. But if you need a 2-year break and you want to do something rewarding for yourself and the world, absolutely look into Peace Corps after COVID is over, because it was the coolest, most fulfilling 2 years of my life. So
I think that's like made abundantly clear by what you just told us about today, Harrison. So that is an incredible experience. And, because I knew you had this incredible experience, I knew we had to get you here to talk about it and share it with everyone. So thank you for that. We have a few minutes left. I do want to open the floor to more questions. We had a good question from Brett. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask Harrison right now? The floor is open. Maybe
another one.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yes, please.
So Harrison, how would you say your formative years, maybe between the ages of like 5 and 11, let's say, impacted your life journey through this career path that you've taken? Just about that time frame.
It's funny that Brett Siegel is asking this question, because Brett Siegel was part of my life from the age of 5 through 11. We went together.
As it was mine.
As was Brian's, so it's like a Robertsville reunion.
And mine.
I had really cool friends, and everyone was really nice, and I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I'm sorry, buddy.
I just had to ask something about Robertsville and our time back then. So
yeah. I hope the school is doing well.
Did you feel like did you feel like you were always comfortable in your own skin, from that young age? Maybe a parallel, question to that. Were you always comfortable? Because I think I agree with the sentiment in that question. We grow and change a lot, throughout our lifetime. So we don't know who we are right away.
Yeah. I think I was a pretty cool kid, but obviously, like, in the context of Pride Month, like, of course, you're kind of different. You just don't know why yet. And then, like, by middle school, you're like, oh well, everybody else is talking about Tyra Banks and whatever super like whatever TV show and whatever
pop culture,
like,
right?
Like, they're talking about the girl. I'm like, well, what about the guy? So,
Yeah, right.
But yeah, everyone was super nice, especially by NYU. Like, it's totally super gay school. So,
right.
Peace Corps too. Like, a lot of, actually, surprisingly, minorities are, I think, in my cohort, completely overrepresented, in the sense that a lot of Black Americans, a lot of Americans from Central and South American heritage, and a lot of gay guys. I just think, you tend to be more progressive in those circles. And
Right.
then that's how you end up volunteering, spending 2 years of your life as a volunteer. Because a lot of straight, it's just not that appealing, I think. I don't want to.
Or, or maybe it's the, Peace Corps helps you find a place. Like, maybe you're trying to explore, find more common ground out there.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of great reasons to do Peace Corps, and you gave us so many, Harrison. There's one more question I think I saw in the chat from Ariel. Can you talk about your art and how it changed with travels? I think we didn't get to touch on this, but Harrison is a very accomplished artist. You can see a few of his pieces hanging behind him on the wall. But Harrison, how do you feel about your art and how that's changed with your travels?
Yeah, I think stylistically, so I've been like painting my whole life, but it really took off during these years in Peace Corps because I had a lot of free time too. So just a lot of watercolors. Brian, maybe you can probably, I'll send you a link. You can send it out to the email to the group later. Just lots of watercolors. And every time I went somewhere or I felt inspired, like either somewhere for traveling or just even a moment in the classroom, that sparked something. Like, I want to remember this moment. I want to remember my kids as cheerleaders. I want to remember the graduation. I would just draw it and kind of take a mental picture. Or like a picture with my iPhone, more realistically, and then bring it home and sit there and just like put it on watercolor, put it on ink. And then that's how that's pretty awesome. So I left with a collection of like close to 100 pieces that I really like from all my favorite moments of Peace Corps and then the 3 years I was in China. So people who inspire me, people who I love, people who I've just challenged me and have deep meaning to me, I will capture them in a piece of art.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. I think, Harrison, you've inspired a lot of people here today who came to listen to your story. And I think it is a very unique experience you've had. I think not a lot of people have had the experience you've had. Maybe for some parting words from you, what advice would you give people who are thinking about Peace Corps or, going into service, outside of more, let's say, quote unquote, traditional career paths and maybe living their values in a different way?
Yeah, I would say it's never too late to change career paths. And, I personally find it just much more fulfilling to work at the Environmental Protection Agency or at NYU or Peace Corps, because work takes up at a minimum 8 hours of your day. And if you're unlucky, it takes up like 12 hours of your day. So how do you want to spend your time? Like, that's a third of your life, right? And what kind of impact do you want to have when you look back when you're 80, right? Like, at some point, getting the corner office, being a managing director, being a partner at a law firm or a partner for consulting, like, it's important, it's prestigious, you'll have it on your resume, you can have Harvard on your resume, you can live in a really nice house, but when you're 80, you're gonna think back more on the experiences you've had, right? And the people you've mentored and changed and built relationships and community with. And I'm glad I found that at like 27. That's when I started this Peace Corps journey. But it's really for, it's never too late to start. It's good for anybody, and just kind of, you can start at some point in your career. Maybe you have done the banking thing and you did save a good amount of money. Then, like, what's next, right? you can start living for yourself and
Right.
doing things for other people that are much more meaningful than just the usual rat race.
So young and so wise, Harrison. Very, very good advice for everyone. I often tell like my mentees and coaching clients as well, when you're 100, looking back in your life, like what will you remember? What will you be most proud of? What will you be, satisfied with your accomplishments? Yeah. If anyone did Peace Corps, I'm sure that's going at the top of their list.
Yeah. Just for anybody having a bad day who's done it, like you just close your eyes and think of your students, like some ridiculous thing that happened in the classroom or outside the classroom, those little moments that you will never forget because you're just at the time, you're just laughing so hard and really enjoying yourself. And I think for people who do public sector work or work at nonprofits, you'll get a lot of those experiences. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we are at the top of the hour, unfortunately. But we are so glad, Harrison, that you joined us today to share your experiences with everyone. The Peace Corps is a service opportunity for motivated change makers to immerse themselves in a community abroad, working side by side with local leaders to tackle the most pressing challenges of our generation. And these days, in a fractured, divided world, bringing people together is of tremendous importance and probably the most important mission of all. So Harrison, thank you for your service. Everyone, hope you had a great time on today's call. We hope to see you again at our next call next month. Consider volunteering, consider Peace Corps, consider doing something great out there when you head out this summer. So thank you again for joining and hope to see you soon.
You're welcome to stay on and chat with me if I've inspired you.
Sounds good. All right, take care, everyone. Ed, we